It has been 100 years since these famous competitions first met. Two of the most famous jumpers in football, the Vics and South Australia. And today, state football returns to Port Melbourne as these two wonderful entities in football do battle in a very proud game. Hello everyone and welcome to our coverage of state football, Victoria versus South Australia from the Port Melbourne ground. Neil Cross has made the trip from Adelaide. Neil, great to have you here. There's something about when you see these two wonderful jumpers doing battle. Well, I know, look, State of Origin football has gone the way of the dodo. That doesn't exist anymore, but I know South Australians are very keen about their interstate footy, and I know the SANFL really wants to win this one. And of course, it's bragging rights really for the best competition outside the AFL. The VFL has that at the moment because they've beaten South Australia and Western Australia in the past couple of meetings. Yeah, but look, one match won't necessarily turn the tables, I guess, but certainly South Australia still considers itself number one. And if we look at their lineup and compare it with the Victorians, I guess it is an older lineup. Speaking of the lineups, first of all, the Victorian lineup, and a great thrill for Travis Robertson, the captain here. A couple of the players to watch. Ian Callanan, the Tasmanian goal sneak, will be prominent today, and also Nick Carter in the middle, and Jordan During will get a lot of the footy. What about from a South Australian point of view, the players that we might be familiar with there? Well, about the only one that you'd really be familiar with would be Salam Hassan. You see that at the moment he will start on the bench. He's gone to Werribee this season. Of course, he was with West Adelaide, played in a grand final for West Adelaide in 2003. Now, let's join the South Australian lineup and a much more experienced lineup, probably an older lineup for SA. It is, and the South Australian competition generally, I guess, attracts that older group of players. They want some stability to clubs. It's all very well to bring through the younger players, but I guess they want those older players. We look at some of those names. I think if there is a problem with the lineup, maybe they might be a bit brutal up forward. But Daniel Shelp, leading goal kicker in the competition, he leads the way at full forward. So let's join the action now. Victoria versus South Australia, and with us in the commentary box is Phil Cleary. So it's going to be Mark Porter and Paul Lindsay who are going to do battle. Umpire Shane Stewart holds the ball aloft, and State Football 2005 is underway. Porter first hands to it in the middle. First contest important. Greg got the first kick. Umpire saying it didn't go 15 metres. And it was the big man in the ruckman, Lindsay, who eventually finished up with the footy, but he was quickly tackled.
Tight straight away too, Peter. Big congestion of players, not a lot of space, not really a big ground, this one.
That might be a telling factor today. Lindsay probably got the tap down that time. Came out to the Liston Trophy winner in field. Out it comes to Jeremy Clayton, no stranger to this ground. Carter at the back of the pack, just tried to give a little dinky handball across to O'Keefe. Now Victoria coming forward, inside the 50. Potsy Adley at the back of the pack, tries to hack kick off the ground. And another hack kick off the ground was by Pitt, the opportunist. He was only able to dribble it through for the first score of the match.
I think that's a good pick to put Pitt in the side. He is a professional goal kicker when you need them in games such as these. Nice tight start, though.
Here's the interesting part. How long have the coaches been able to work on any sort of set play? Rowe goes very long. Porter comes over the top with a punch and then slides it into open play for Atkin. It's going to be run down quickly. Can't get the kick away. Squire, the tackler. South Australia's away. And inside 50, aiming for Shell. One hand up. Couldn't pull it down. Vicks try and clear at the back, and we'll get a ball up. No, ball squeezed out towards the boundary line. This is Backwell for South Australia. Around, hand pass was...
He'd already got rid of it.
He heard the umpire. And he's actually going to make Backwell line up for it in the pocket.
Yeah, funny there, Neil, because I thought he was calling it as if he'd already gotten rid of the ball and he was interfered with. He's saying, even if you're pushed after you've gotten rid of the ball, surely to be downfield.
Backwell around and tries to improve his angle and moves it around nicely, and the opening goal of the match to Brett Backwell from South Australia.
Well, that's a good piece of work. I noticed there, Neil, that Kenner was into the play, wasn't he, in the midfield, setting it up, and Blackwell, of course, a lot of people would have seen him over here as a Carlton player, and the free kick. Well, just have a look at this. Just watch. There it is. He gets rid of the ball. Yes, there's definitely there. Was it Jovanovic who gave away that free kick after the event, but it went back. Good goal.
As it turns out, didn't make any difference. Clever goal by Backwell. Field in the middle, couldn't get his hands to the footy. Kenner, a couple of early important touches. Arnott taken down in a strong tackle by Alloway, and that ball is locked up. As we said, a perfect day for footy. Temperature up in the high teens. Not a lot of breeze to speak of. A little slippery in the middle of the ground. Lindsay gets the tap only as far as Atkin. Didn't get very good purchase with the kick. And that's a good mark in defence by Graham. Gives it out to Arnott. Touch ball. Atkin, knowing that it was touch, with plenty of good calling from the South Australian umpire in Richard Williams, who is the man in white today. So we're a bit confused here, Phil. We don't know who to abuse, the man in white or the man in orange.
We'll find a way, Peter.
I'm sure you will.
Ball down and kick forward there by Carter for Victoria, up inside 50. The contest at half forward. Callanan onto it quickly with pace. Straightens up, can use his left foot, just slots home the goal. Well done. Good start for Ian Callanan in his first touch.
Yes, indeed. Gee, there's some good football on show here. No doubt about that. Wasn't that smart play? Pitt in the contest. Just did enough to have it slip over the back, and Callanan there able to break free, go onto the left boot. You mentioned him early, Peter, before the match as a goal kicker, and you're dead right. And look at this, he just clears the way, but it's this little piece of speed and the steady. Well, they'd like that down in Tassie, wouldn't they?
Bit of a mismatch against Hopwood there, and Callanan was able to burn away. Carter towards Field. Atkin tries to make a path through the middle, had his pocket picked. Field is again in after it, down at the bottom of the pack. He'll need to knock it out. Umpires pinged him.
Don't agree with that decision. In fact, that ball was pushed back. I know the principle's right, but on that occasion, it was pretty hot in there, wasn't it?
It was. Paul Lindsay tries to give the handball off to Jason Rowe, but the umpire is telling him to come back and take his kick. Victorian defenders have been able to get down there, although there's a bit of a hole out there in front of goal. Porter fell back into it. Backwell, Beams, took his men on, and he may have been a little lucky.
Well, I reckon that was more of a case there when he did take them on, Peter, and then he got collared the second time. Prior opportunity there.
Umpire deciding to throw the ball up. Lindsay gets the tap down. Cowan tries to get through. Greg with the relieving kick. Comes out wide. Squire held a long time in the tackle. Callanan off to Carter. Up to half forward to a one-on-one. It was a lovely kick by Carter, but the bounce was cruel for Pitt. And Smith is going to relieve across half back.
Smith goes to the wide open spaces towards Whiteman on the far side of the ground, and Whiteman just tries to slap it along the boundary and succeeds in only getting it out of bounds. Incredible you could run out of space on a ground like this.
Yeah, it's in good nick, Neil, but it isn't really a big ground. It might give the impression, people might think it is, but it isn't really. Tight.
Lindsay at the back. Backwell couldn't handle it. Victorians force it forward. Carter was the man. And towards the boundary again.
In turn gives it to Beams. Might have been pushed in the back. Umpire said play on. Carter, Alloway, Field. Did well to avoid three. Then the South Australian defence there in numbers. Lindsay, strong body, just came through, and Porter felt the effects of that. Clayton running around in circles, tackled by O'Keefe. South Australia are going to get out of it, but they're going to have to work very hard to do so. It's Whiteman. Spots up a man at half forward. Good contest by Beams. Kenner just wasn't able to get a handle on the footy. Then he slips. Smith coming through. Robertson to Greg. And now Victoria getting away, but the kick was poor. And South Australia taking a relieving mark through Graham, who's been busy early.
He has, and he plays on and goes long and direct. Target was Cowan. Over the back it's come Crow. Hand pass set up. His teammate Shell pulled down. And umpire coming in and adjudicating. Didn't have much opportunity.
Is that anything that saved him, Neil? No prior. He was grabbed as soon as he got the handball. Maybe he should penalise sides that want a handball to someone who's in trouble.
Lindsay gets rid of Porter. I think he's still suffering from that knock he received before Porter. Lindsay, that was a throw. A one-handed handball in this game is a throw.
That was a massive whack on Porter. It was a beautiful hit. And Porter was so courageous and copped it sweet. Down he went.
And here he is, with the bell still ringing in his ears.
Surely they are. Good contest, that one, Peter.
Veteran of 110 AFL games, gives it to During. Looks for Alloway, had a couple to beat, should have got a free kick and did. The second of the men arriving in Luke Cowan didn't have eyes for the footy. Alloway showed courage to stand underneath it and take the mark. Gives it to Crow. That's Rod Crow. Up to Pitt. Just on the attacking side of the wing. Looks inside. Good lead presented. Still a long way out from goal. Berry. He goes very, very wide. Into the pocket to Beams, who squares it up. And they went the long way around. It was sort of going from Melbourne to Sydney via Adelaide, but eventually they got there, and it's going to be Sean O'Keefe shooting for goal.
Yes, they did go round, but I suppose they played a bit of possession football, and they aren't getting, I think, again, Peter, so much out of their tools, so they are playing elusive stuff.
Sean O'Keefe has had a wonderful season. Starts at left, it stays left.
Not much in this game, you would think, though. The sides look to be pretty evenly balanced. Or evenly matched, I should say.
What's Rowe's option this time? Think he might try the big one again? No, just shorts it up this time. Arnott, he goes long towards the wing. In position was Atkins. Smith worked him away from the ball very nicely. He's forward of the centre just. He can look up across half forward. And he opts to go inboard badly. As a result, turnover on the lead. Potsie-Adley just couldn't stretch and get the ball out in the pocket.
Yeah, Justin Berry there kicking the ball, not getting the best result. He's been in good form with the Frankston side. A bit of controversy about him being left out of the list early on. And he forced his way in, maybe after Brian Mace hit the roof.
Selectors don't take notice of club presidents, do they?
Yeah, well, he's the GM, but they do sometimes, I reckon.
Ball ace.
They listen to your bloke at Collingwood, I know that much.
What's his name again?
Yes.
Bit of push and shove. It's been a fairly tight opening, but just one side or the other, just managing to get some space at the right time. Clayton working hard in close, gets it out of that defensive area for South Australia towards the wing and out of bounds. Going to throw in front of the main grandstand here at Port Melbourne. Beautiful afternoon in Melbourne.
I see Porter's having a breather too. The Vic said hope he's all right, but he really got whacked hard and went down like a bag of spuds. There he is going to back to the bench, right in front of you.
O'Hara's doing battle with Ricks, so the two second-string ruckmen, if you like, going for the ball and knocking it out in front of Jordan During. Neil spoke about space. We just saw, as we look at a section of the crowd, and plenty of Crow eaters here, Jeremy Clayton in that pocket there. He doesn't need much space, Phil. He was working in a phone box and got around about 4 of them.
He's good.
Ricks and O'Hara again. Might have been a bit of holding going on. Umpire said they were holding each other, so he didn't pay anything. Just called it a scoreless draw. Atkin got it forward. It'll go over the boundary line in front of his Tasmanian teammate in Benny Beams. Umpire telling him it's getting ugly.
Good call.
So he'll pay a free kick here if there's any sort of holding, you would think. Well, he didn't have to worry about it, just a push right between the 4 and the 4 by Ricks on O'Hara. The big man, Brett O'Hara, one of the SANFL's biggest improvers. Gives it across to the run of Gowans. Long drifting kick. Greg there at the front spot. Good cohesive work. Robertson to Atkin to half forward. Kick is good. Potsie-Adley out on a long lead. Now, who's he got to kick it to? Because he's the spearhead. He's got Hall out wide, and Atkins telling him he's got Hall out wide, and he didn't see him. So he decides to go long instead, and that was not a good option because O'Hara was in the hole. Callanan about a foot shorter than him, and he was getting plenty of advice that Hall was out there, and he should have honoured it, Phil.
Yes, took a long time to move it, but there was a bit of a problem because right down the corridor there was no one at all. They're all out wide.
Yeah, Ricks had a fistful of jumper and
paid it to him. Good idea.
Yes, he's paid it to O'Hara, who had his hands on his hips, and I thought he thinks it's not his kick. But you were seeing a lot of flesh there of the midriff of O'Hara, and that was because Ricks had a big fistful of jumper. During from the defensive kick out by South Australia, just puts it back inside 50. Beams, he's a sharpshooter, but he's on the wrong side for a left footer.
Yeah, During's been in just superlative form, Neil, here in Victoria. He's been killing them with the Bendigo Bombers. 5 possessions already, Caulfield tells me.
His beams just starts at narrow, and that's where it finishes. So a minus score for Victoria. Just ever so slightly stretching out that margin.
See, Mark Gregg appeared to have the job on Blackwell, but I'm not sure what they're doing in that back half. Blackwell slipped back and Gregg's up the field, and he's got no one at the moment.
Row into Jeremy Clayton. Ill-directed kick floated over Smith's head. Atkin takes the mark. Gregg getting a lot of it. He's got Hall. Decides to go shorter than that. Robertson over his head. Now they've got a problem. Barging through a Sheedy. Heavy Shepherd in the middle of the ground. Knocked O'Sullivan down. It's out in front of the big man in Brant Chambers, but the boundary line wins out.
Wasn't that fascinating? Gregg went up the ground. Blackwell stayed back. They miskicked the ball, and it found its way to Blackwell and nearly opened up. Very odd.
Ricks and O'Hara. Ricks just gives him a little shove again. O'Hara taps it down brilliantly, and Inkster kicks the goal. And that was wonderful ruck work by O'Hara. After all the hustle and bustle that was going on with Ricks, he just put it into the path of his forward. And Timmy Inkster, the opportunist, kicks the 3rd goal for South Australia.
Yes, smart play that. Beautiful piece of work. And Inkster there, who we've seen playing here in past times. Onto it. Here he goes. Beautiful piece of work. Nice tight game, this one.
Bread butter for Tim Inkster, that sort of palm down run onto the ball.
Yeah, he likes those, Neil, doesn't he? And he finishes off beautifully.
And quick off the mark and in good form for the Eagles in the SANFL. O'Hara, opposed to Ricks, who got the tap down, still play on. It's fairly tough in that centre. South Australians work it clear. Wintle, it might have been, who kicked the ball long and direct inside 50. Jovanovic with a backhander towards the boundary. Gregg wants to take the boundary line and he thinks that's the best option, and it is for Victoria. They're under siege back there, but 2 points the margin in favour of South Australia. It's been a very, very tight but very good opening.
And how good was the Magarey medalist in Jade Sheedy in that passage of play in the middle of the ground?
These blokes are in a good paddock too that we were just watching.
Oh, and Inkster just took a little bit long then. The same game situation from the stoppage that we had before, and Inkster ran onto it and just was pulled down at the last moment.
And just hit his leg, Neil, didn't it? Otherwise, it would have been holding the ball. Presume it was below the knee.
Was. Gregg to During. Ball magnet, Jordan During. Goes to the Norm Goss stand side. Kick was beautiful. Mark taken by Rod Crow. Told to go. He goes for the little kick as well to Atkin. O'Sullivan in support, elects not to use it. Atkin assesses his options. Alloway comes on a long lead and now has to double back. Podsiadly used his body well, should have taken the mark in the end. He did all the hard stuff. Out it comes. South Australia getting it out to Jeremy Clayton. Busy as usual. Just kicks it more in hope, but he knew he had 3 men there. They had the numbers. Sheedy did well again. Hospital handball, though, did his teammate no favours whatsoever. And the umpire will bounce it. That teammate was Whiteman.
He Podsiadly be disappointed not plucking that mark. There's a big contingent of officials. Decked out in the suit and tie, been to the lunch. Had a couple of Chardonnays there in the Port Melbourne rooms.
Did you manage a couple yourself?
No, I stayed on the water. Wouldn't have minded.
Wintle at the base of the pack got it down. Hopwood couldn't handle it, patted it on. Umpire said that is not only a free kick for a throw, but it's 50 metres because the South Australian in ball ace went on with it and kicked it forward.
Gee, you reckon that was a throw? Didn't someone hit it first and then just didn't it get tapped on?
Well, I don't think he had control, Hopwood, and just decided, well, I'll just tap it on.
Well, yeah, I mean, let's have another look.
That pass from the base of the pack.
That's that. Well, gee, that is a very odd look. No, don't think that's right.
Well, right or wrong, it's a free kick to Hall and a 50 metre. So Hall, well astray with the kick, might be out on the full. It is.
Poetic justice on it.
Indeed, it was.